Hi everyone, Lisa Haven here, and I've got a major red alert to share with you guys, and one that is too important to ignore. And I'm gonna ask you to please share this video with everybody you know, because right now we have leading congressional Democrats who are literally calling for unrest against GOP members and against Republicans. And this is happening, this call, right, is coming at a time when literal violence and rioting and looting and protests are breaking out by radical leftists all across our country. I do believe that the Democrats absolutely have something in mind. And this is one reason I want to encourage you guys, get on over to restrictedrepublic.com, because I share all kinds of inside information about what's truly going on. And I've got additional content on there that you can't afford to miss and that can't go on other platforms. So get subscribed today at restrictedrepublic.com, and you can check out some of the videos that they don't want out there, but they're here on Restricted Republic. And right now we've got a 14-day trial. All right, so I've kind of sidetracked there. Let's start first with one of the top leading Democrat congressional leaders who are calling for downright unrest. Take a look to what Anaya Presley had to say.
I'm looking to the public. You know, this is as much about public outcry and organizing and mobilizing and applying pressure so that this GOP-led Senate and that these governors that continue to carry water for this administration, putting the American peoples in harm's way, turning a deaf ear to the needs of our families and our communities, hold them accountable. Well, make the phone call, send the email, show up. You know, there needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives. And unfortunately, there's plenty to go.
Unrest in the streets, as long as there's unrest in our lives against these GOP members who are harmful in some way, shape, or form. I mean, give me a break. This is above and beyond. What happens if some Republican candidate said that? It would be smeared all over the news. But here they are. Ever wonder why we have literal riots breaking out? It's because of people like her who are standing side by side talking about it. I revealed earlier this year on Restricted Republic how Joe Biden, campaign members, and many even actors and leading Democrat officials were bailing looters out of jail, saying, we'll pay your bail to get you out of jail even after you looted. Ever wonder why the riots are still going on? Because many in the Democratic Party are making statements like this. This is a downright takeover, and we all know Anaya Presley is not a Democrat. She is a socialist, communist, radical person. And they want the destruction of the United States of America. It's all part of the Communist Manifesto, and we're headed 1,000,000 miles a minute in our once free United States of America. And let me tell you something, you are not going to like the United States of America that these people are trying to bring in, right? It's not free. It looks something like what we have today, right? But even worse when we start ending up more and more in breadlines, because that's what happens under communism. But it's not just her, right? We also have, here's a Zero Hedge article, Pelosi calls Republicans domestic enemies of the state. So here Anaya Presley is saying, call for unrest against her political advocates, against the GOP. And then we have Nancy Pelosi put the icing on the cake and call us domestic enemies. But let's listen to what she actually said.
Trying to interfere in our election. But they're not the only ones. We take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And sadly, the domestic enemies to our voting system and our honoring our Constitution are right at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue with their allies in the Congress of the United States. But again, let's just get out there and mobilize, organize, and not let the president deter anybody from voting. And again, support the postal system, which is election central. They're doing everything they can. Suppress the vote with your actions, scare people, intimidate by saying law enforcement will be there, diminish the role of the postal system in all of this. It's really actually shameful. Enemies of the state.
Enemies of the state. She concludes that with enemies of the state. They're at Pennsylvania Avenue, and she calls him a domestic enemy of the state. That's radical. That is when you have one calling for unrest and one calling us domestic enemies. This is above and beyond. Ever wonder why there's been an attack to get President Trump out from day one? But hey, that's not all. Check out this article on Gateway Pundit. The Democratic leader Talcum X calls for more violence and complete dismantling of U.S. police after last night's Kenosha riots. And here's a little tweet out there that Sean King put. Nah, I'm not going to call for peace. We tried peace for years. Y'all don't understand that language. We are calling for a complete dismantling of American policing. It's not broken. It was built to work this way. And mayhem is the consequence. You earned it. Whoa. Whoa. And people were actually liking this. You earned our mayhem. We're calling for violence in the streets. Maybe why? Maybe that's why we're seeing stuff like this. Here we have DC clothesline. Louisiana Attorney General warns violent crime will reach epidemic levels. Why? Well, the Democrats are calling for it. Here we have another one. Truly Times. Violence breaks out as conservatives refuse to back down. Black Lives Matter Marxist mob in Beverly Hills. The Sun.co.uk. BLM mayhem. Swarm of armed anarchists wielding axes and guns descend in Denver police headquarters and shoot fireworks at cops. National Guard, this is on Fox News, has been called out to Kenosha after the rioting on Sunday there in the city, which chaos and more chaos and more chaos has broken out. What are they after? Why would Democrats put such rhetoric out there? You see, those are the questions we have to ask. Why are you calling for unrest? Why are you putting such rhetoric out there? And why aren't you condoning the acts of the rioting and looting that are happening in the streets? They're not condoning it. They're supporting it by bailing them out. Not all the Democrat candidates, but some are. Again, that's on Restricted Republic. But there's so much going on. It's insane. It's almost as if they're looking for a radical revolution to implement a new system better than capitalism. You mean there is nothing that would be better than that, right? Because their new system is not new. Their new system is an old system under a pretty new little name called socialism, but it's communism in disguise all over again. This is not what you want in the United States of America. We were already told that back, and I'm going to kind of take you backwards. We have this article that was put out years ago by Michael Schneider, and I reported on it, 72 types of Americans that are considered potential terrorists in official government documents. I warned you then that if you enjoyed freedom or stood in the name of freedom, that you were on a target list. And this is exactly the same thing that's being targeted right now with the with everything that's going on, right? With the COVID, with the riots. Freedom is the enemy somehow. And that's what's been sick. But this is, again, this is 72 types of Americans that are considered potential terrorists in government documents. If you follow any of these beliefs, such as talk about individual liberties, advocate for state rights, or want to make the world a better place, yes, that's real. Or you talk about anti-immigration, anti-Muslim, the Patriot movement, or if you are a member of the Family Research Council, no joke, or a member of the American Family Association. These are on the Southern Poverty Law Center, which if you're a member, they list you as domestic terrorist. If you oppose to Agenda 21, talk about conspiracy theories, oppose the New World Order, talk about freedom, talk about being a citizen, talk about an army of God, talk about the right to bear arms, talk about fear of communist regimes, you stockpile ammo, talk about end times, or are an evangelical Christian, or even support candidates like Ron Paul, then you're listed as an enemy of the state, as, Miss Pelosi likes to put it, right? And these are the kind of people that they have been after for years, and now they're getting what they want to accomplish, and they've worked years to get here. And they're literally doing everything in their power. And now they're even talking about literally stealing the election. Here we are, gatewaypundit.com. Hillary Clinton brags about how Democrats are going to try to steal the election. Joe Biden should not concede under any circumstances. In other words, Joe Biden has the right. She's saying Joe Biden, no matter if there was actual fraudulent dealings or not, right? Whether there's proof or evidence of voter fraud doesn't matter. Joe Biden should not concede the election under any circumstances. That's downright terrifying, right? And by the way, okay, the catch-22 here is Joe Biden should not concede under any circumstances. However, if President Trump tries to not concede, right, then they're going to basically rip him out of the office no matter what. Take a look here, Infowars.com. Facebook holds daily meetings for contingency plan after deep state steals election from Trump. Twitter, Instagram, YouTube are working on a post-election strategy as well, which basically says this post-election strategy, and I'm summarizing here, says that President Trump, if he does not concede to the election, they won't allow him to push his propaganda on their platforms of how he thinks there was mail-in voter fraud. That's why they've already taken care of it and are starting to tear it down. Unless, of course, Joe Biden decides to, well, contest or not concede the election, right? It's okay for Biden to not concede, but it's not okay for Trump. This is above and beyond. Anyhow, I've really gone on longer here, but the Democrats are calling for unrest. Maybe this is why actual unrest is breaking out by leftists all over the place, because that is the leftist radical army. Anyhow, I'd love to get your comments and concerns. Please don't forget to make sure that you have a virtual private network. If you don't have a VPN, you guys know I use one both on my phone and on my computer. But it basically hides everything that you look at on the internet and kind of acts as if it's coming off an entirely different server. And if the government comes knocking on the door of the VPN owner, the VPN only has the last 24 hours. This is why I personally use Virtual Shield at hidewithlisa.com. In today's day and age, you cannot afford to not have that protection. So don't forget to check them out at hidewithlisa.com. Anyhow, I love all of you. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm Lisa Haven, signing out.